My name is Adrian Laughton, and I'm 44 years old. For the past 12 years, I've worked as a senior financial analyst at Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm in downtown Chicago. I've seen my share of corporate politics, backstabbing, and ambitious climbers who think they can shortcut their way to the top. But nothing prepared me for what my own protégé would do to me. 2 years ago, I was assigned a direct report named Jesse Rindle. He was 31, fresh out of Northwestern with an MBA, and honestly, he impressed me from day one. Sharp mind, asked the right questions, seemed genuinely eager to learn. I took him under my wing the way my own mentor had done for me 15 years earlier. I taught Jesse everything I knew about financial modeling, client relations, regulatory compliance, and the intricate dance of corporate consulting. Late nights, weekend calls, detailed explanations of complex procedures that had taken me years to master. I even shared my personal contacts and introduced him to key clients at our biggest accounts. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. Jesse was a quick study, I'll give him that. Within 6 months, he was handling smaller client accounts independently. By year 1, he was contributing significantly to our quarterly reports. I was proud of him, genuinely. I saw myself in his ambition and dedication, or at least what I thought was dedication. He'd often stay late, working on what he called special projects for upper management. I encouraged this initiative, thinking it showed the kind of drive that would serve him well in his career. During our mentorship, I maintained detailed records of everything I taught Jesse. It was standard practice for senior analysts to document training progress and maintain copies of all correspondence with direct reports. These files included Jesse's original employment application, training schedules, performance evaluations, and copies of emails where we discussed various professional certifications and career development goals. Last fall, Morrison & Associates announced a major restructuring. 3 senior analyst positions were opening up, including one that would essentially be my promotion to regional director. I'd been eyeing that position for 2 years, and everyone knew it. My track record spoke for itself. I'd brought in over $2 million in new business, maintained a 98% client retention rate, and mentored 4 junior analysts who'd all gone on to successful careers. The promotion felt like a natural progression, almost a formality. That's when I started noticing changes in Jesse's behavior. Suddenly, he was having lunch meetings with department heads I rarely spoke to. He was CCing senior partners on emails that didn't require their attention. During team meetings, he'd subtly redirect conversations toward his own contributions while downplaying collaborative efforts. I should have seen the warning signs, but I was too focused on preparing for my own promotion interview to pay attention to the political maneuvering happening right under my nose. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was reviewing client portfolios when my phone buzzed with a company-wide email from HR. Congratulations to our newly promoted regional director, Jesse Rindle. I read it 3 times before the words sank in. My promotion. My position. Gone to the man I'd spent 2 years training. I sat there staring at my computer screen, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. 12 years of loyalty, countless 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and weekend calls with demanding clients. All of it apparently meant nothing when compared to whatever backroom deals Jesse had orchestrated during those mysterious lunch meetings. Within an hour, Jesse appeared at my desk. He had the decency to look uncomfortable, but not ashamed. "Adrian, I wanted to talk to you personally before you heard it through the grapevine," he said, adjusting his tie nervously. "I know this might come as a surprise." "A surprise?" I kept my voice level, professional. "That's one word for it. Look, I want you to know that I have nothing but respect for everything you've taught me. You're an incredible mentor, and I'll always be grateful for that." His words sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced this conversation in the mirror. But the company needed to make some tough decisions about the future direction of the department. I leaned back in my chair and studied his face. "What kind of tough decisions, Jesse?" "Well, To be completely honest, the partners felt that the regional director position required fresh blood, someone who could bring new perspectives and innovative approaches to client relations. He paused, then delivered the line that would echo in my mind for weeks. The company needs new blood, Adrian. Sometimes experience can become a limitation rather than an asset. New blood. At 44, I'd been written off as obsolete by someone who couldn't even run a basic financial projection without my guidance 18 months ago. I nodded slowly, keeping my expression neutral. I see. Well, congratulations on your promotion, Jesse. I'm sure you'll do great things in the position. He seemed relieved by my calm reaction. I really appreciate your understanding, Adrian. I was worried this might create tension between us. I'm hoping we can continue working together as a team, with me in more of a leadership capacity, of course. Of course, I replied. I wouldn't dream of standing in the way of progress. Over the next few days, I watched Jesse move into the corner office that should have been mine, complete with a view of Lake Michigan. He ordered new furniture, had his diploma reframed, and started holding daily staff meetings where he outlined his vision for transformational growth. The same strategies I'd developed and refined over a decade were suddenly being presented as Jesse's innovative ideas. But I didn't explode. I didn't storm into the senior partners' offices demanding explanations. I didn't even update my LinkedIn profile to seeking new opportunities. Instead, I did what I'd always done best. I observed, I documented, and I prepared. Because in 12 years at Morrison & Associates, I'd learned that successful revenge isn't hot-blooded and emotional. It's cold, calculated, and methodical. I decided to give my notice and leave professionally. During my 2-week notice period, I began organizing my files for transfer. Digital documents, client communications, training materials, project reports. Everything needed to be properly archived before my departure. And as I went through years of accumulated data, including my detailed mentorship files on Jesse, I started noticing discrepancies. In my training documentation, I had copies of various emails where Jesse and I discussed professional development goals. He'd mentioned several times that he was working toward his CFA certification and had claimed to have completed all 3 levels. As his mentor, I'd encouraged this and had even written recommendation letters supporting his applications for salary increases based on these credentials. But something nagged at me. The dates didn't seem right. According to my files, Jesse had started claiming CFA certification in his 2nd month at the company. But the timeline for completing all 3 levels of the exam didn't align with when he'd actually started the program. During one of my final days at Morrison, I decided to verify the information. A quick search of the CFA Institute's public database revealed the truth. Jesse Rindle had never completed Level 3 of the CFA exam. In fact, according to their records, he'd failed Level 2 twice and never even attempted the final level. This wasn't a small embellishment. The CFA designation was worth an additional $15,000 in annual salary and had been specifically mentioned during his promotion interview as evidence of his commitment to professional development. Jesse had built his career advancement on a lie, and I had the documentation to prove it. I spent my remaining days quietly collecting evidence, email threads where Jesse referenced his CFA credential, salary negotiations where the certification justified pay increases, client presentations where he'd introduced himself using the fraudulent designation. By the time I cleaned out my desk, I had compiled a comprehensive file that told a very different story about Jesse Rindle's qualifications. On my last day, I submitted my resignation letter and shook hands with everyone on the team. Jesse made a point of thanking me publicly for my mentorship and guidance, promising to carry forward the lessons I'd taught him. I smiled, wished him luck, and walked out of Morrison & Associates for the final time. But I wasn't done with Jesse Rindle. Not even close. I waited exactly 1 week after leaving Morrison & Associates before making my move. Not out of hesitation, but out of strategic calculation. I needed Jesse to feel secure in his new position, to start making decisions and commitments that would be difficult to reverse. I needed him to dig his own grave a little deeper. During that week, I refined my documentation from home. The file I'd assembled wasn't just about the fake CFA designation anymore. I decided to conduct a more thorough background verification, the kind that Morrison's HR should have done, but apparently hadn't. What I discovered was even more damaging than I'd expected. Using professional networking sites and public databases, I began cross-referencing Jesse's resume against verifiable records. His MBA thesis, which he'd claimed was published in the Northwestern Business Review, appeared nowhere in their academic archives. When I contacted Northwestern's library directly, they confirmed that no student named Jesse Rindle had ever submitted a thesis for publication to their business review. More troubling was his claimed internship at Goldman Sachs Chicago. According to his resume and LinkedIn profile, he'd worked there as a summer analyst in 2019. But when I reached out to a former colleague who now worked at Goldman, she discreetly checked their employment records. Jesse Rindle had never worked there in any capacity, not even as an unpaid intern. This wasn't just resume padding or harmless exaggeration. This was systematic fraud. Jesse had constructed key elements of his professional history from whole cloth, and Morrison and Associates had promoted him based on these fabricated credentials. I spent the weekend preparing my submission to Morrison and Associates' compliance department. Their anonymous reporting system was designed exactly for situations like this, and I'd actually helped develop their investigation protocols during a consulting project 3 years earlier. I knew exactly how thorough their process would be and how seriously they took credential fraud, especially after the firm had nearly lost their SEC registration over a previous incident involving falsified qualifications. My report was comprehensive. 23 pages of documentation, including photocopies of Jesse's original employment application from my mentor files, screenshots from the CFA Institute database, verification from Northwestern about the non-existent thesis, and my colleague's confirmation about the Goldman Sachs fabrication. I also included email correspondence where Jesse had used these fraudulent credentials to justify salary increases and client presentation materials where he'd misrepresented his qualifications to clients. I submitted the report anonymously through Morrison & Associates' secure portal on Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after my departure. Then I waited. The beauty of corporate compliance investigations is their predictability. First comes the discreet inquiry phase, where HR quietly verifies the basic facts. Then comes the formal investigation, where they interview witnesses and collect additional evidence. Finally comes the disciplinary action, which in cases of credential fraud is almost always immediate termination. I didn't have to wait long for confirmation that the wheels were in motion. My former colleague Sarah Martinez called me Wednesday evening. She'd worked in the cubicle adjacent to mine for 6 years, and we'd stayed in touch after my departure. "Adrian, something strange is happening at the office," she said, lowering her voice even though she was calling from home. "HR spent all day yesterday going through Jesse's personnel files. They brought in someone from legal, and she was asking very specific questions about his background and qualifications." "Really?" I kept my tone neutral, curious but not overly interested. "What kind of questions?" "Details about his CFA certification, his MBA thesis, previous work experience. They even pulled his original employment application from archives and were comparing it against his current employee profile. I haven't seen them do that level of scrutiny since the Gerald Thompson incident 3 years ago." The Gerald Thompson incident. Thompson had been a senior associate who'd claimed to have a law degree from Yale. When Morrison and Associates discovered he'd never actually graduated, they'd terminated him immediately and reported the fraud to state licensing boards. Thompson never worked in financial services again. "That does sound unusual," I agreed. "Maybe it's just routine verification for his new position." "Maybe," Sarah said, but her tone suggested she didn't believe it. Jesse looked pretty nervous today. He kept asking people if they'd heard anything about compliance reviews or background checks. And Marcus from HR wouldn't even make eye contact with him during the morning staff meeting. By Friday of that week, Jesse's nervousness had apparently escalated to obvious anxiety. According to Sarah, he'd spent most of Thursday afternoon making personal phone calls in his office with the door closed, speaking in hushed tones, and frequently mentioning lawyers. He'd also started staying unusually late, presumably trying to demonstrate his dedication while the investigation proceeded. Meanwhile, I wasn't sitting idle. I'd begun reaching out to contacts at competing firms, and the response had been surprisingly positive. Word travels fast in Chicago's financial consulting community, and several people had already heard about my departure from Morrison. The general assumption was that I'd been passed over for promotion due to office politics rather than performance issues. One call came from David Peterson at Peterson Strategic Group, Morrison & Associates' biggest competitor, and a firm I'd always respected for their integrity and client-first approach. "Adrian, I heard you decided to leave Morrison," Peterson said during our conversation Friday afternoon. "I've been following your work for years, and I'd love to discuss some opportunities we have opening up. Would you be available for lunch next week?" "I'd be very interested in hearing what you have in mind, David," I replied. "I'm looking for an organization that values experience and authentic expertise." "That's exactly what we're looking for," he said. "Someone with real credentials and a proven track record. We've had some interesting proposals come across our desk lately from Morrison & Associates, and frankly, we've been questioning the competence behind some of their recent strategic recommendations." As I hung up the phone, I realized that Jesse's betrayal might have inadvertently done me a favor. While he was about to face the consequences of his systematic deception, I was being courted by the most prestigious firm in the city. Sometimes the best revenge is simply allowing fraudsters to destroy themselves, while positioning yourself to rise to where you truly belong. The call came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after I'd submitted my compliance report. Sarah was practically whispering into her phone, "Adrian, it happened, Jesse's gone." I was in my apartment kitchen, making coffee while reviewing some consulting proposals I'd been working on. I set down my mug and walked to the window overlooking downtown Chicago. "What do you mean, gone?" "Security escorted him out this morning. Box of personal items. The whole corporate perp walk. Word is spreading through the office like wildfire." She paused, and I could hear the office buzz in the background. "The official email just went out from HR. Jesse Rindle's employment has been terminated effective immediately due to violations of company policy regarding credential verification and professional standards." 3 weeks. That was actually faster than I'd expected, even knowing Morrison & Associates' thorough investigation process from my own experience helping design it. Any word on what specifically happened? Not officially, but Marcus from HR looked like he'd seen a ghost when he delivered the news to Jesse's team, and they're already reaching out to all his clients to reassign their accounts to other regional directors. The senior partners are in full damage control mode. After hanging up with Sarah, I sat at my kitchen table for a long moment, processing what I'd just heard. 2 years of training, mentoring, and sharing my expertise with Jesse Rindle. 2 years of believing I was helping build someone's career the right way, through hard work and genuine learning. And in return, he'd stolen my promotion using fabricated credentials, and then had the audacity to tell me the company needed new blood. Well, the company had certainly gotten rid of some blood, just not the kind Jesse had expected. My phone rang again an hour later. This time it was David Peterson from Peterson Strategic Group. "Adrian, I hope you don't mind me calling, but something interesting just happened. Morrison & Associates contacted us this morning about potentially transitioning some client relationships. Apparently, they've had a sudden change in their regional director position and are concerned about maintaining service quality during the transition." His tone was carefully neutral, but I could hear the curiosity beneath it. "Is that so?" "It is. And it got me thinking about our conversation last Friday. Are you still available to meet this week? I have a proposition that might interest you, especially given the apparent instability at your former firm." That afternoon, I found myself sitting in Peterson Strategic Group's downtown offices on the 42nd floor, looking out at the same view of Lake Michigan that Jesse had been enjoying from his stolen corner office just days before. David Peterson was everything I'd expected, sharp, direct, and refreshingly honest about his business practices. "Adrian, I'll be direct with you," he said, sliding a folder across his mahogany desk. "We've been tracking Morrison & Associates' client satisfaction scores for the past year, and frankly, they've been declining. Some of their recent strategic recommendations have been questionable at best, and we've been wondering about the expertise behind their analysis." I opened the folder and immediately recognized several projects I'd either initiated or heavily contributed to during my 12 years at Morrison. Seeing my work being evaluated by Peterson's team felt oddly validating. Now, with this sudden change in their leadership structure, we're expecting some of their clients to start looking for alternatives. We need someone who understands Morrison's client relationships, knows their methodologies, and can provide the kind of experienced guidance that builds long-term trust. He leaned forward slightly. "We'd like to offer you a senior consulting position with a starting salary of $140,000, plus performance bonuses that could add another $30,000 to $50,000 annually. You'd have your own team, direct client interaction, and complete autonomy to develop strategies based on your expertise rather than corporate politics." The offer was $25,000 more than the regional director position at Morrison would have paid, plus bonuses that could potentially double my previous salary. More importantly, it represented genuine respect for my experience rather than dismissal as outdated. "There's one more thing," David continued. "We've been approached by 3 former Morrison clients in just the past few days. They're concerned about the stability and competence of their advisory relationships, especially after some questionable recommendations that apparently came from their recently departed regional director. They specifically asked if we knew any experienced analysts who might be familiar with their accounts." I recognized the client names he mentioned. All 3 were major accounts I'd personally developed and managed during my years at Morrison, relationships I'd built through careful analysis and consistent results. Jesse had inherited them with his promotion, and apparently, he'd already managed to damage those relationships with whatever innovative approaches he'd been implementing. "I'd be very interested in reconnecting with those clients," I told David. "I spent years understanding their business models and developing customized strategies for their specific growth objectives." "Excellent. When can you start?" 2 days later, I was signing employment contracts with Peterson's strategic group. By the end of that first week, I'd already had preliminary meetings with all 3 former Morrison clients, who seemed genuinely relieved to be working with someone who understood their businesses and had a proven track record of delivering results. Meanwhile, Jesse's situation continued to deteriorate rapidly. According to Sarah's updates, Morrison & Associates' investigation had uncovered the full extent of his fabricated credentials. The fake CFA certification was just the beginning. They'd also discovered the non-existent MBA thesis and the completely fictitious Goldman Sachs internship. The firm's legal department was now considering whether to pursue civil action against Jesse for the financial damages caused by his misrepresentation, including potential client losses and the significant cost of the compliance investigation. Jesse had hired a defense attorney, but there wasn't much legal defense against documented fraud. The evidence I'd compiled was overwhelming, and Morrison & Associates had their reputation to protect. They'd invested heavily in their compliance systems after previous incidents, and they couldn't afford to appear lenient with credential fraud. 6 months later, I was thriving at Peterson's strategic group. My client portfolio had expanded beyond the original 3 former Morrison accounts to include several new clients who'd been referred specifically because of my reputation for honest, experienced analysis. My first performance bonus alone exceeded my entire previous base salary at Morrison. Jesse Rindle, meanwhile, had disappeared from Chicago's financial consulting scene entirely. Word through the professional network was that Morrison & Associates had indeed filed a civil lawsuit against him for damages, seeking compensation for investigation costs, client relationship repairs, and reputational harm. No reputable firm in the city would consider hiring someone with his documented history of systematic credential fraud. According to LinkedIn, he'd eventually moved back to Ohio and was working for a small accounting firm at a fraction of his former salary. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. Jesse had claimed that Morrison and Associates needed new blood to replace experienced professionals like me. But when his own blood turned out to be contaminated with lies and systematic deception, the company's immune system had rejected him completely. Meanwhile, my genuine experience and authentic credentials had landed me exactly where I belonged, at a firm that valued integrity over politics, competence over manipulation. I learned something valuable from the whole experience. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't what you actively do to someone else. Sometimes it's simply allowing the truth to surface while you continue building the career you deserve, based on real credentials, genuine expertise, and honest relationships. Jesse stole my promotion through fraud and betrayal, claiming the company needed fresh blood instead of experienced leadership. But ultimately, he did me the biggest favor of my career. He forced me out of a company that didn't truly value experience and into one that appreciated what I actually brought to the table. His systematic deception destroyed his own future and elevated mine to heights I might never have reached if I'd stayed at Morrison and Associates. That's the fundamental truth about building success on lies. Eventually, the foundation crumbles under scrutiny, and everything constructed on top of it comes crashing down. But when you build your career on solid ground, on real experience, authentic credentials, and genuine expertise, it creates a platform stable enough to support whatever opportunities come your way. If you enjoyed this story, like this video, and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get updates on new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.